So today we are going to talk about Chinese history and its cultural development. In fact, when the concept of China has yet to be formed, human beings has been living and doing production works in this piece of land from the days of the old Stone Age. And people in this land, they learned to grow and raise crops and animals. They also began to live in groups and enjoy regional culture. After a long time of division and integration, different regional cultures converge and form major cultural systems. That is the Chinese culture. That's the foundation of Chinese civilization. So we know that all cultural development depends on the geographical conditions. It is the geographical condition that distinguish cultural features. So before we talk about Chinese culture, let me introduce the geography of China and alongside with the development of a Chinese cultural progress. So before I talk about the geography, I have to make it clear that this is not talking about administrative territories, because administrative territory has a clear boundary, meaning the sovereignty and the ownership of this piece of land. But when we talk about the natural geographical space that gives birth to China's core culture, it is in a way overlapping with the administrative territory, but it does not have a very clear boundary. It's quite vague. So this is a map of China, and we can see that China lies to the southeast of Eurasia. And then to the north of China is the desert, Mongolian and the desert and the grassland, Mongolian grassland. This is the north part. And to the west, it is the mountains and the plateaus. It is the Himalaya mountains range and the Tibetan plateau. And to the east and the south of China, it's the seas and oceans. It's the Pacific Ocean and different East China Sea, South China Sea. And to the, so by just looking at this map, people may find this, the communication from China to the outside world may be eastbound. So they will only move to the east, and the people from the east, from the sea, from the ocean, will move to China because all the communications to the north and the west will be blocked by the mountains. But this is not the case. In fact, people migrated to all directions and integrated with people from all directions. So cultural merge from all directions. There are basically 7 kinds of landscape in China. And the middle and the lower range of Yellow River Plain and the middle and the lower ridge of Yangtze River Plain is the main agricultural and farming region of China. And this nurtured the farming culture of China. This is the core place that gave birth to Chinese cultural and Chinese philosophy. We can see that in the picture that I give in the middle or lower ridge of Yellow River Plain, and the condition of the soil, because it's very, very dry. And the condition of the soil, the weather, the climate are not very favorable to agriculture. So the land is very dry and lack of nutrition, and the dust is covered with the surface soil. So it's very hard to grow. You can see it is the grass, and it's hard for a tree to grow, for example. So in this part of the China, people work very, very hard for survival. They tend to cooperate with each other so that they can survive. And in this region, people would admire loyalty to the family, cooperation, hard work, and also abide by the law. And they're quite conservative because they don't believe in any fancy ideas or fancy dreams. and the emphasis on hard work and social relationships. It's only by helping each other and cooperate with each other can they survive in this area. So this place gave birth to the famous Chinese philosophy, which is the Confucianism. But the neighboring region, which is the middle and the lower reach of Yangtze River, it's quite different. Because when the Yangtze River flows to the plain, the area has a very fine irrigation with all kinds of streams and lakes. So the soil is rich and fertile, even when the weather condition is not so favorable. People still can have quite good harvest due to the irrigation system. This guarantees a proper harvest. So the people there were basically very happy. They are free from concerns, and they have more time to consider about their relationship between nature and themselves. And most importantly, they would think deeply about human beings themselves, the individual human beings themselves. They would ask questions like, who I am, why I'm here, and what is my relationship with the universe and the nature. So in the middle and the lower reach of Yangtze River, this is a place that gave birth to another school of philosophical thought, which is Laozi. And they are metaphysical, and they would really think about questions related to who I am. So in the contrary to the people in the middle and the lower reach of Yellow River Plain who are conservative and the emphasis on hard work and loyalty, social relationships, and people in the middle and the lower reach of Yangtze River, they will emphasize on the natural law and also the role of people in this natural law. So beyond the farming culture, to the north of the farming culture, the northeastern forest region and the Mongolian grass region, these two regions merge and form a grassland culture. The grassland culture people, they are herds, they are hunters, they are warlords, they are fighters, they are conquerors, and they basically fighters. So when they do not have enough supply of food, so when the things are bad, days are bad, when they do not have enough food supply, they will go down to the south and have fight with the people of the farming culture. And so this is where the north part of the grassland culture and the southern part of the agriculture culture will come across to each other, will meet each other, and they will have war. But at the same time, they will have communication along this. So we can see that this is the map of Great Wall, and we can see this Great Wall exists between the farming culture and the grassland culture. So it is along the Great Wall that two cultures met and integrate and become the core formation forces for the Chinese culture. And then to the coastal region, along the coastal line is the coastal region. This is where the ocean culture exists. And the people there have trade with countries abroad. And this is also the place where Chinese culture meet the West. And people there, they are very daring, adventurous, and they welcome challenges. And this is the place where Chinese swords were introduced to the West and to the world, and also the Western philosophy and the world culture introduced to China. And this place has a profound influence on the modern Chinese culture in the later years of cultural formation. And then to the northwestern desert region, that's the Silk Road culture. And people start to trade with Central Asia, Middle East, and European countries in a very early age as the Silk Road expanded and extended along this region. So tea, silk, China, they are the main commodities and the products from the Central Asia, such as carrots, tomatoes, were all the way transported to China and the Middle China. So this is the most important. Another thing which is most important along this route is the Buddhism, the introduction of Buddhism towards China. And this foreign religion also triggered the invention of a local religion, which is the Taoism in China. So in China, some people believe in Confucianism. A lot of people are the believers of Buddhism, and some people are the pupil of Taoism. So this is the three major religions in China. So after that, let's introduce the highland culture. This is the fifth piece of cultural places. It is the southeastern mountainous regions. And this place have very different landscape due to the different altitude. And some people live in the very top of the hill, and some people live down in the valley. So they have very different lifestyle. And we can see the mountain, some people living on the top, some on the bottom. So people, even though they're very close to each other, they develop different lifestyle and different culture emerge. And this part of the people, they are very good at communicating and being tolerant with different cultural significance, and they integrate and cooperate with cultures from outside. So we can see as a conclusion, the key word for Chinese culture is this word, it's compatibility. And so we know that Chinese culture has never been a monoculture. It is the result of integration and assimilation of many cultures. And these cultures met, they fighted, they compromised, they integrated, and they combined with each other, they learn from each other, they adopt other things from other cultures and adjust it into their own culture. They learn, they grow together, and this formed the key feature of Chinese culture. That also is why Chinese culture has the capability of survival for 5,000 years. So let's talk about the Chinese history. And we know that China has a very long history. We say we have 5,000 years of history. So I have to break down this 5,000 years of history into 6 sessions. First is before Qing Dynasty, which is 16th century BC to the 3rd century BC. And then the second session is Qing and Han Dynasty. This is from the 3rd century BC to the 2nd century AD. And third is the Tang Dynasty, which is the 2nd century AD to the 9th century AD. And then we have Song and the Yuan Dynasty, which is the 10th century AD and the 5th century AD. The 5th section is then the Ming and the Qing Dynasty, which is the last dynasty of the China, which is from the 15th century AD to mid-19th century AD. Then we'll come to the China of the modern age, from mid-19th century AD to mid-20th century AD. So if we will start with the first one, and before Qing Dynasty. And every Chinese, no matter how bad his knowledge on history is, he will definitely know one date. That is 221 BC. This is the time, or this is the year when Qing, the first empire of China, united China. And so making China into a big empire. That's the turning point. But before Qing Dynasty, before Qing united China, there's the time from 16th century BC to the 3rd century BC. This is a time when Chinese philosophy and Chinese culture were in the shaping period. The culture was forming, That's why it's very, very important period. So we have to start from the Chinese history by talking about the story of two men, Yan and Huang, in the 16th century BC. Yan and Huang, they are names of two men. And Yan, he was the tribe leader of a farming culture along the Yellow River part. And Huang, he was the tribe leader of representing grassland culture to the north of the Yellow River. And this two tribe, and we say, the Chinese people said we are descendant of Yan and Huang, because this two tribe in the 16th century had already exist in this region, this part of the region, and they fight with each other, as we said before. The grassland culture, when they do not have enough food supply, they will go down to the south and to the farming culture. So the Yan tribe and the Huang tribe had a lot of fights, and gradually the two cultures merge, and they have their final war in this region, Zhulu and Banquan. After these two final war, Yan, the farming culture, was defeated by Huang, the grassland culture, and then the two cultures emerged. The two cultures integrated into a one culture, which is called the Yan and the Huang culture. So we said the Chinese people were descendant of these two tribes, and we are the sons and the great grandsons and daughters of Yan and Huang. And during this period of time of the 16th century BC, the living conditions of people in this piece of land were improving greatly. They started to build houses, and they started to weave clothes. It is said that it is Huang's wife. She discovered silkworms and the weaving skills so that people can have clothes on, and the wheels of cars has been invented, weapons were discovered, and also there exists of written words. So we can find some documented words from the archaeology discovery, and the medicines have been applied, calculation and a calendar were invented. So after a long years of control of Yan and the Huang tribe, many years later, in this land of China, we see the birth of a first sovereignty nation, which is the Shang Dynasty. The Shang Dynasty lasted 500 years, from 1662 BC to 1046 BC. And this is the Shang Dynasty. The Shang Dynasty have three features that are worth noticing. The first is the writing system. Now, Shang people perfected the writing system, and so there's a written record of history from the Shang Dynasty. From archaeological discoveries, we find inscriptions on the bones and the shells, such as turtle shells, that record the event that took place during the Shang Dynasty. So we can see from Shang Dynasty, China's history has been recorded. And the second thing worth noticing is the use of bronze weapons. And also from the archaeological discoveries, we find bronze weapons in the tombs of Shang people. So we know that bronze is sharp enough to kill people, but it's not hard enough, it's too fragile, too weak to be used as a farm tool. So these weapons, these tools, they are not applied to the farming and farmers, but they are used as weapons to kill people. And those people who are in the possession of these weapons is having a vantage position, and they use this to defend their land and establish a sovereignty nation. So the third thing we need to notice in the Shang Dynasty is that they have the establishment of a sovereignty nation, and all this establishment has been recorded in the written system. So this is the Shang Dynasty. And after 500 years, in the 11th century BC, there's another group of people called Zhou, the Zhou people. They defeated the very powerful Shang and became the ruler of the vast land of China. But the Zhou people, they were a very small tribe. They're from the remote regions of China, not well-developed region of China. They were comparatively weaker in terms of a political system, military forces, economic sense. So they are very confused why they can overthrow such a powerful Shang people. So they started to think, they started trying to find explanations for their success. They start to think, what power helped us to defeat this powerful Zhou people, powerful Shang people? And then they came to a conclusion. The conclusion comes with this two ideas. One idea is virtue and destiny. The other idea is there's a superpower force or a god. So they believe that everybody was born with your destiny, true, sure. However, your destiny is not, it's not in your hand, in fact, in the destiny. What is in your hand is your virtue. Even though you were born with the destiny of a king, you need your virtue to realize it. If you're not virtuous enough, then the superpower, who has the right of supervision and adjudication of a person's virtue, will give up on you. Then without the superpower's help, even though you have the destiny, you will not be able to realize your destiny. So it is the virtue that make people realize your destiny. And in this case, the people said, even though you were born in a royal family, but if you're not virtuous enough, the superpower would refuse to help you, then you will not have your destiny realized. So the Zhou people believe after 500 years, the Shang people have lost their virtue and they lost the help of their superpower god. And the Zhou people, they were very virtuous and they got the help from the superpower. That is the reason they can defeat the powerful Shang. This thinking is very, very significant in forming Chinese culture, this ideal of virtue. And so the Zhou people, the thinking of virtue is a breakthrough from the old idea of ancestral or family gods. And everybody is protected by your ancestral and the family god. But your family god can be powerful or can be weak, depending on what family you're born into. So if you're born into a very powerful family, then you have a good fortune and then your whole life will be protected. But if you're born a slave or a poor farmer, then you are destined to torture of your whole life. But the ideal of virtue is a breakthrough from this. They build a transcendental power that was derived from one's own virtue. People believe that you're born in a family, right? But then your family god can be very unpredictable because you don't know why. Sometimes there will be natural disasters as flood. You don't know why there is a thunderstorm. People attribute the thunderstorm as saying your god was angry at you, or the flood, the natural disaster is a flood because your god, the protection god, was sad and mad at you. But they don't know why the god was angry. Now they believe that the god was angry because you're not virtuous. You must have done something that violate the principle of virtue, and which this annoyed the god. So therefore, you have to be virtue to gain the help from the god. So in this sense, your destiny, your fate is in the control of yourself. And so this is the one progress that is in the development of Chinese understanding of their own position in nature. So you're in the control of your destiny, and your virtue is significant enough to change your fate or destiny. This is a very important idea, and this idea even affects people's behavior nowadays. So your destiny may be lost. By keeping it, you have to respect your virtue. And also, as I said, this emphasis on virtue has become a very important ideology of the Chinese nation. So even now, when people were judging or assessing someone's ability or quality of becoming a leader, or when company was deciding to hiring or rejecting a candidate of applicant, one thing they will consider, or one of the most important things they will consider, is one's virtue, whether he's virtuous enough to match with the responsibilities that that this position is required. If the mismatch is taking place, then a disastrous consequence would happen. So we have to consider the virtue of a person in related to how much responsibility and how much power he can have. So this is the idea of virtue. So also in this period of time, Confucius was born, and Confucius thinking was developed. And Confucius, as we can see, he was born in 551 BC and died in 479 BC. This is the period when in Athens, in the western part of the world, in Athens, Hellenism was developed. The Socrates, the post-Platonism, these philosophical thinkings in Greek was invented. So in this period of time, East and West, we have great philosophers who were thinking about the fate, the happiness of people. And we can see that Confucius, in Chinese people's sense, he was an educator, he was a philosopher, he was a statesman, and he was a symbol of Chinese culture. But most importantly, he was a philosopher. So the Confucius philosophy try to answer the question, how does the world operate? How does the world operate? According to Confucius, he believed that world operate on one term, which is harmony. Harmony. And the harmony means there's the harmony between nature and people. As one person, you have to give your reverence and a conformity to the nature. But at the same time, you have to be independent and self-reliance on yourself. So you keep a harmony between you and your nature. And then the natural world, then you can gain the amount of things from the natural world, but you at the same time, you have to respect the natural world. And the natural world will provide you with whatever you need, but in a proper amount. So there's a balance and a harmony between the nature and the people. Nobody should be greedy and take advantage of the other. So that's the harmony between the natural world and the people. The second level of harmony, Confucius say, is the harmony between people, between people and people. So they believe that between people, we should show respect and modesty to other people. And Confucius believed that you have to have a series of behavior code to govern the behavior, the way of treating others between king and the minister, between father and the son, between husband and the wife. So he even dictate the code of conduct between the king and the minister, fathers and son, and husband and the wife. It's not that the king can control the minister. No, there have to be a harmony between them. The king can give order, but the king also respects the minister. The minister can receive order and follow the policy, but the minister also had the right to guide and educate the king. So that is the balance between people and people. The third harmony, the third level of harmony is the individual's soul and body. You have to have a peace and harmony within yourself, within your own soul and body. You have to feel the peace in your mind, in your heart, and also you have to feel the strength in your body. So in this way, you can be a noble person in your heart, but at the same time, you have the power to defend yourself, to protect yourself, and help others. So this is what he said about the inner sageliness and outer kingliness. So there should be a harmony within yourself. And this is the ideal of harmony proposed by Confucianism. But the question is, how can you achieve this harmony? How do people achieve harmony? How can we achieve harmony if we are born evil? So if you're born evil, you won't respect others, you don't show modesty, you feel the strength, but maybe you don't care about the peace, inner peace in your mind, and you don't care about the virtue in yourself. So if you're born evil, then it's only your natural behavior to take advantage and taking over other things. So the ideal of harmony is achieved based on the Chinese understanding of the essence of human nature. Because Chinese people said that we believe the human nature were born good. The nature of human is originally good. We were born a kind, nice, and a generous person. So we are originally good. And one example, how do I know that? The example of this is that from a classic book, a classic textbook, in fact. The textbook is said to be compiled in the 13th century, but it is a collection of the traditional Chinese wisdom from long ago. So this classic textbook, which is the very first book for every Chinese, I say literally every Chinese, if you want to learn, if you want to go to school, if you want to learn to read and write, that is the first textbook that he used. And the textbook, he said, is called the 3-character poem, because every sentence is written with only 3 characters. And this, because this is easy for young kids to read and to learn and to memorize. And in this classic textbook, which is composed of the 13th century, which it was a collection of the traditional Chinese wisdom, it is said in the very first 2 sentences that tells us this: every man are born kind. By nature, they are all alike, but by education, widely apart. So people believe everybody was born kind. It is the social environment. Here, the education means it is the social environment. It is the people around them. It is the situation that they live, make them different. So based on this essential understanding of human nature as being good, so people believe that they can be educated to become a kind, noble person, to have harmony within themselves and to have harmony with other people, and then to achieve harmony with the nature. So that's why the story goes that a mother who wants to build his son with the noble heart, he moved 3 times. He moved his home 3 times to find a good environment for his son, a better environment for both his education and his nurture of his nature. So that's why people emphasize that you have to have a good environment so that it can build you into, it can nurture yourself and triggered the kindness in your heart to make yourself basically a kind person when you're grown up. So that's the Chinese understanding of human nature. And during this period of time, another idea exists. Another idea on the how does the world operate exist and come into being. Now, this is not, as we can see that Confucianism focused on the person-person relationship, but this understanding of the world is called yin and yang, is a dialectic thinking, a theory of relativity. So you can see that this is the yin and yang fish. It's quite a symbol of Chinese culture, right? So this idea of yin and yang. Yang in Chinese means the sun. And the yin in Chinese means the moon. So yin and yang means the brightness, the power. Yang in a way which is the representative of sun, which sun as its representative means the power, the brightness, the energy, and all these activities, enthusiasm. Well, yin as moon is its symbol, indicates the darkness, rest, and peace, all these ideas. So in this designation of this yin-yang fish, we can see from the inside, which is the dark side, it is the moon, the earth, darkness, rest, and space. While we can see the yang side, it's the sun, the light, brightness, activity, sky, and the south. So this yin and yang fish is what Chinese people believe the whole world operates. This is how the world operates. Chinese people believe that everything has both yin and yang side. For example, a tree. When one side of the tree is facing the sun, then this side of the tree is the yang side. And the other side, which is in the shade, is the yin side. And everything has 2 sides, man and woman, day and night, good and bad. Our life, we can have the peak period of our life, or we also have the lower side of our life. So everything has yin and yang. Yin and yang is the integral part of everything. It's all aspect of natural world could be seen as having a dual aspect. They are integral part of the universe. Everything has 2 sides. They are contradictory, they're days and the night, but they are unification. They united so that we can have the complete comprehensive whole of one thing. And also, just as the day and the night, yin and yang, they are interchangeable, but interdependent. But if you have sweet candies whole day, you won't feel the happiness, you won't feel the sweetness of the candy. Only when you taste the bitterness of something, and this contrast make you know that sweet is sweet and the bitter is bitter. So if you only have one thing, if you can only have the bright daytime without the night rest, then your life won't be, you won't have a complete life, right? So the dark and the brightness is interchangeable, but they are also interdependent. And there are a lot of applications of this yin and the yang idea into the modern day Chinese people life. For example, Chinese medicine. And we see Chinese medicine, we see people as a complete system. And the Chinese medicine would not take you as like different organs as separate organs. They will treat you as a complete system. And so if one part of your organ has too much heat, or that is too much yang, then you need to supply it with water or yin to keep the balance of it. So some people may say, for example, oh, I was under such a great pressure these days, so I worked day and night for a project. So I had a bad headache. I had a terrible headache. But to many Chinese medicine, you may get the suggestion that, oh, I think you should have a foot massage. People may get if you're not in the Chinese condition, you get really confused. I had a headache, I should take aspirin, but why should I get a foot massage? Because in the Chinese system, that it is that your head, which is towards the sky, is the yang side. You had too many activities taking place in your brain. You use your brain too hard, so there's much heat generated. So there's too much yang in your brain. But what you need to know is to have a counterbalance, because your feet, which is in touch of the earth is the inside, and should be strengthened so that you can keep the balance of yin and yang in yourself. So by having a foot massage, you strengthen the inside of yourself, and then you can keep the balance of yourself. The activities in your brain or the pain in your brain can be subdued by the massage on your foot. So this to people outside Chinese culture, this may sound very strange, but if you understand that we take your whole body as a complete system, not as separate organs, then you can somehow understand it. And another thing is giving compliment. Many people know that Chinese people were very, very modest when they hear a compliment, where you say, oh, this is really good. And the reply from a Chinese would always say, no, 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 I'm not so good. I still have much room for improvement. No, I'm not good at all. People would say this is the way Chinese people show their modesty. Yes, in one way it is, but why people need to show modesty is that we know that yin and yang is interchangeable. So when you agree that you are already good enough, so that means you have too much yang. And when there's great, when you are in the peak of something, of yang, the only natural thing to do is you're going down to the opposite direction. So if you agree that you have already achieved the greatest achievement, then the future trend is obviously that you are going down. You are not moving up. Instead of going up, you're going down. So when you receive a compliment and when you agree that you have achieved something, but you still have room for improvement, this indicates that you realize that you are not at the very top. You still are moving forward and moving upward. And so your yang is not too much. So this is the idea of giving compliment and also the response of Chinese people of having a compliment. And another story related to yin and yang is this story about an old man lost his horse. So in a village, of a farming culture, an old man lost one of his horses. And we know that horse is a very treasured possession of a family in a cultural, which is a farming culture. So the people around, the neighbors around would feel very sad for this old man and come to say, oh, I'm sorry to hear that you lost your horse. The old man said, who knows? Maybe this bad thing can turn into a good thing. And then days later, his horse came back with another wild horse, came back to him. So everybody was very happy to say, oh, congratulations. You now have two horses. Instead of losing one, you gain one. And the old man said, who knows? A good thing may be a bad thing in disguise. So next day, because it is a wild horse, his son was trying to tame the wild horse and then overthrown by the horse. So he fell down and broke his leg. And the neighbors were all very sad for the family, because in the agricultural society, a young labor is very, very valuable for the family. If a young man can't work, and that means a huge loss for the family. So people said to the old man, oh, we heard your son broke your leg. I'm really sorry to hear that. But the old man said, who knows? Maybe a bad thing can turn to a good thing. And then soon, the emperor's order came by saying, we're going to have a fight with the enemy. So all the eligible young men should be enlisted to fight in the war. But this young man, the old man's son who broke his leg, cannot join the army. So he saved his life. He saved his life because his leg was broken. And this bad thing turned into a good thing. So the story shows clearly that the ideal of relativity, there are always two sides of one thing. This ideal of yin and yang was developed in this time span and before the Qing Dynasty. And this is one of the foundations for Chinese philosophy. And as we can see, during this period of time, 771 BC to 221 BC, it is the time where Chinese culture was forming and shaping in basically two lines. One is on the social order, Confucianism, emphasizing on the harmony and the nice and kind to nature, to other people, and to keep a balance in themselves. And also another thinking is on the natural order, how the nature organized and how the nature operate by itself. It is the yin and the yang. Everything has two sides. You have the two sides, it's interchangeable and interdependent, and you have to you should never go to any extreme. That is the Chinese basis of Chinese culture. And so let's come to the next part of Chinese history, which is the Qing and Han Dynasty. It's between 3rd century BC and the 2nd century AD. We say this is this period of time, 221 BC, when the Qing Dynasty finally united China, and then to the 220 AD, the Han Dynasty collapsed. So during this period of time, so what happened in this period of time to China? Huge things happened. The Qing Dynasty, it united the nation. Now, this is the region where Qing Dynasty exists at the time. And now we have the first emperor of China. Qing united the nation, become a one big empire in the East. When we say Qing united the nation, we mean not only it united the nation in the territorial sense. It also united nation in its government system, political system, economic system, and a cultural system. So that's why under Qing's control, China became a real one nation. It is a united empire. Because for the first thing, China's unification is through the county system rather than the feudal system. And in the Qing Dynasty, the emperor divided the whole vast country into counties. And with each county, the government would give a government official, would assign a government official to administrate this region. And then this government officials is in direct report to the emperor himself. And after several years, these officials will be relocated to other part of the government, to the other part of the country, so that no power can be formed. The power cannot be formed, the power enough to fight against the emperor himself. So instead of sending troops like Romans to govern the remote areas, the Chinese Qing Dynasty, they have this political system which it's centralized. The power is centralized, while the government officials were sent out to control the vast land by the Qing Dynasty. So this centralized government system has already existed in 221 BC, some 2,500 years ago. The second thing that Qing united China is that it created a hieroglyphic writing system. Now, before Qing Dynasty, different kingdoms, different small kingdoms have their own writing system. Then Qing Dynasty simplified and perfected the writing system to make it popularized throughout China, throughout the nation. Now we can see this is an example of Qing's writing about home or family. And it is derived from this character. We can see clearly that home means a house with a pig inside. So people believe that the house with foods in the house, it's your home. It's a home and a family. So this is the writing system that Qing Dynasty is unified. And this has a very, very significant influence on Chinese culture, and also for the continuation of the Chinese culture. Because in a vast piece of land of China, people have different dialects. And the with dialects, people cannot communicate. Nobody can understand. People of like 200 kilometers away, people cannot communicate by the oral system because they cannot understand the dialect. But with the common writing system, people can communicate no matter where they go, where they come from, and the government policies was issued in the same writing system, everybody can understand, and people send letters, and people record history in the same writing system, everybody can understand. So this creates a very strong cultural bond and the cultural identity of the Chinese people. So we all write the same, and we understand each other. We learn the same books, we take the same government policies, and then we have the same ideological belief. So this creates the very foundation for the Chinese culture to pass on. And some scholars even believe the writing system is one of the very, very important factor for the continuation of Chinese culture, which has lasted for around 5,000 years. And this is the cultural significance. And in a way, also Qing Dynasty unified the measurement system. So they have the same weights, same weight, same system for the measurement of height and the length For example, the road is built on the certain weights, and also the wheels, the axis of the wheels would be built on the equal size. So wherever people go, they can use the same cart system. They know when the business go to a different places, they know the same weight system, same measurement system, and people become easy for communication and easy for trade to grow. And so the same measurement system is very good for the business, for the economic sense. And the most importantly for the economic system is that they have a unified currency. And this is what the Qing government issued of the currency, the basic unit of currency throughout the nation. Even though before Qing Dynasty, there are about 6 or 7 different kingdoms. And before that, there's something like 200 different kingdoms. And then the 200 kingdoms were combined into 7 major kingdoms. And then the 7 major kingdoms was conquered by Qing Dynasty and became one Qing unified dynasty. So all these small kingdoms before Qing has their own currency. Now the Qing Dynasty, they unified the currency system and decreed that everyone should use this currency. And this guaranteed the good economic system. And so everybody, wherever they go, they use the same currency for trade, and the trade become prosperous in the later Qing Dynasty. So throughout these systems, China was in a real sense united, become a united empire. And this is what Qing Dynasty has done. And this is the legacy that is passed on to even present day China. Now, the next stage in this period is the Han Dynasty. The Han Dynasty, there is a lot of communication. Han Dynasty is a peak, one of the peak period for cultural exchange and cultural communication in the Chinese history. And because in the Han Dynasty, there are a lot of conflicts with the minority, which is called Hu minorities in the north. The Hu minorities, they are horse riding people, they are herdmen, and obviously they would come to the south, to the Han Dynasty for produce and for crafts. So they have a lot of fight with the Hu minorities. And in the fighting and also in the communication, also with the trade with the Hu minorities, people learn, the Han people learn to do the horse riding, then to ride horse. And they also adopt the Hu's food, like dairy products, like the food that can be conserved for a long time in the desert. And also they take their uniforms, their military uniforms for horse riding. So they have a uniform that is basically can be convenient for riding on a horse. So the Han Dynasty gradually, with the integration of the Hu minorities, they gradually learn to ride horse, herd horse, and the food become more verified, and they have changed their military uniforms. Also, the Silk Road to the west started from the Han Dynasty. We can see from the beginning part, this Xi'an, the terracotta warriors, you can see that from the middle part of China, all the way through Xinjiang to Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan and to Russia, and all the way to Turkey, and all the way to Greek, and then to Rome. We can see this is the symbol of Rome. And so this people along this route of trade, people started to exchange goods and commodities and ideas. It's not only the goods move, but people move and idea exchange as well. And the cultures formed. And it is during this period of time that Buddhism was introduced to China. Buddhism at the time was so popular that in the Han Dynasty, some of the emperors have to to send out policies that force young people who are the monks in temples to go back to their home to do the farm work, because there are so many young people who want to become monk in the temple, and there's not enough labor in the farmland. So this, the government, according to the government policies during that period of time, you can see that Buddhism in China was very, very popular and developed very fast in the Han Dynasty. And also another thing worth noticing in the Han Dynasty is that Confucianism became the major government-supported religious philosophical thinking of the society. Because at the early stage, the government took a policy of recuperation. The emperor and the royal family lead a very, very simple life because the economic development at the time was very bad. Then, due to years of they relaxed the tax and the covey of the common people, and after 40 years of peaceful economic development, Han Dynasty become very, very rich. And now they have time to think about their ideological beliefs. And then they adopt Confucianism as the prevailing philosophical thinking for the society, because we know that Confucianism emphasis on harmony and order, respect and hierarchy, benevolence and the rules. They believe this is a proper thinking for an agricultural society. So started from the Han Dynasty, they made Confucianism the most prevailing and the most emperor-supported philosophy in China. This is about the Qing and Han Dynasty. And so I think I'm just going down to the Tang Dynasty, and then we will stop this talk and receive questions. And as we say, Tang Dynasty is from the 618 AD was the Tang Dynasty. And before Tang Dynasty, after Han Dynasty, there was a short period of division, and then Tang Dynasty reunited China as becoming the superpower of East Asia. At that time, the Tang Emperor was called the Khan of the Heaven, and the people from other neighboring countries came to China to pay their worship to the Khan of the Heaven. And we can see that Tang Dynasty have 70 neighboring countries of diplomatic relationships, and 3,000 foreigners were appointed, the government officials. And this is quite different from the practice now. And in the Han Dynasty, they even give their government official positions to foreigners. And also in Guangzhou, which even now is the very, very well-known international trade port, foreigners were gathered in that city for international trade and business. And the capital city of Tang Dynasty at the time was the #1 biggest city in the world. It have several millions of people living there, and around 50,000 foreigners live there permanently for academic study, business, and religious prospects. So we can see from the map that we start from China, Chang'an, and go all the way to Persia, to Mediterranean Sea, and across Mediterranean Sea to Europe. So this is the whole way, there's a Silk Road to the west. And also, Tang Dynasty see another peak of integration of ethnic cultures. We know the Tang Dynasty people think that we are all big family. This is their mentality. And the Tang Dynasty also have borrowed the closest from other ethnic groups, because in the Tang Dynasty, people see these people who are horse riding and living on the horse have a very convenient dress or clothes. So they changed their clothes to start wearing pants. Before the Tang Dynasty, the educated people or the scholars or government officials, they don't wear pants. They wear gowns or dress for men. So this can be seen from the sitting posture of Chinese people at the time. Chinese people before Tang Dynasty, the sitting posture is like this. They kneel down and sit on their feet. But in the later on, when we see the paintings from the Tang Dynasty, people start to sit on chairs because they start to wear pants. And then this makes the sitting posture very convenient. Otherwise, it's inconvenient for men to sit like this because they don't have pants. And the sitting, also the music and the dance of the Tang Dynasty also changed too. A lot of musical instruments and the music piece were imported from Persia. We can see this girl, she was playing a musical instrument. This musical instrument was originated from the Persian Empire. So the Tang Dynasty is another peak of cultural integration. One of the very famous poets of China, some scholars will believe that he is the #1 poet in China, which is Li Bai. In fact, Li Bai, when he was born he was not born in China. He was born in Kyrgyzstan. And then in a very young age, he and his family migrate to Chang'an, to the capital of the Tang Dynasty. And he was educated there in Chang'an and then became a high-ranking government official and a very, very famous poet. Even now, we say he has around 3,000 poets passed on to the present day China. We know that when there's the time when the printing is very hard, the popularization and the preserving of poems can be quite hard. And for he himself, there are more than 3,000 poems conserved, and that's incredible. So through education and examination, many young people like Li Bai was promoted to the government level. And he has no family background, and because of his high talent and passed the examination, he became a high-ranking official and a very popular person in Tang Dynasty. So this Tang Dynasty experienced another peak of cultural integration there. Let me finish with this Tang Dynasty and then go on to the Song Dynasty. But I'm afraid maybe we don't have enough time. Shall we take questions, or we'll just finish it very quickly of the Song Dynasty, then we will go on to, if we have time, we'll take questions. All right. And then the Song Dynasty is the golden age of Chinese period, because we say it's golden age because it is very prosperous. It is the very rich country at the time. And because people had a very happy life and there's not much war during this time. The idea is this: the civil servants was the dominating power at the Song Dynasty, because the civil servants is in favor of the emperor. Most of the Song emperors like poems, like culture, like painting, and like delicious food. They don't want to fight. So the civil servants who are the scholars, educated scholars, are in the favor of the emperor, but the military officers are not in the favor. Therefore, people respect, at the time, people respect the intellectuals. And that's when the time that people start to emphasize on education, on taking the test and then becoming the government official. So the intellectualism and becoming a scholar is a wide dream for a lot of common people. And then let's come to the Ming Dynasty in the 14th century. The Ming Dynasty is the kind of dynasty that start to be conservative and closed. The cultural development and the integration of cultural with other cultures stopped during this period of time, because the first emperor rule, why from Ming Dynasty it stopped? Because the first emperor of the Ming Dynasty, he studied the history and find almost in all dynasties, the first emperor or the second emperor, they are very wise. They have very good policies, but these policies were not implemented properly by his followers, by the emperors that following the first couple of emperors. So he decided that I am a good emperor, I know what I'm doing, so my first emperor rule cannot be changed by my followers. So nobody, my sons and grandsons and the following emperors cannot change any of my policy. So this leaves no room for the later on people to make changes or adapt the policy to according to the environment. But what happened in the world at the time is that the Ming Dynasty is the time of the Queen Elizabeth I in Great Britain. We know what happened with the Queen Elizabeth I in the Great Britain. Everything changed. The Great Britain start a new era of this. So from the Ming Dynasty, also according to history, the Ming Dynasty rebuilt the Great Wall. We can see this is the Qing Great Wall, where the first emperor built the Great Wall. It is a lot of blockade, but there are still breaks in between. People and goods and trade can move between the two sides of the Great Wall. But the Ming Great Wall is like this. It is fully connected and there's no breaks in between. So goods and people cannot communicate between the two sides of the Great Wall. So the Great Wall integration on the north side of China has been stopped. And along the east and south side of China, which is the coastal line areas with the ocean culture, has also been blocked because the Ming Dynasty emperor has enforced a naval blockade, preventing the private trade of people along the sea, because they believe there is pirates there. So to defend the pirates, they block the whole trade. And so that is the Ming Dynasty. People, the whole nation, the thoughts become conservative and closed. So then come to the Qing Dynasty. This is the last unified emperor of the traditional China. The Qing Dynasty was not governed by the Han people. They governed by a minority of people called the Man from the northeast part of China. They are the minority, they are the herdsmen, they are the forest people, and they gradually expand their force and conquer the whole land of China. It is a vast country, but even though they are minorities, they are another ethnic group. They think they call themselves Man, but they also call themselves Chinese. So this idea started from the Qin Dynasty, that we are a unified China, is prolonged, and the legacy has been continued even to the Qing Dynasty, which is around 2 centuries ago. So you can see this is an inscription of a name of a hall in Summer Palace, in the imperial garden of the emperor. And you can see the inscription is written in Chinese as well as in their original language. So even the Man people, an ethnic group of people, they still believe they are Chinese. They are part of the Chinese culture, but they are in a minority group. So, but it is the cultural integration, but there's also cultural conflict in the Man and with the Chinese, the Han people. in this dynasty. One of this key issue is how to keep your hair, how to keep your hairstyle. The Man people, the minority people who are now in control of the vast land of China, their tradition is for men, they will have this kind of hairstyle. They will braid their hair. Other part of the head will be the hair cut off, but then they will leave one part and then braid it as long. So this is not the tradition of Han people. So the people had a lot of conflicts in this. Now, this become an issue of life or death. The Qing government said to the Chinese people, if you want to keep your head, you have to make your hairstyle like this. If you don't want to keep your head, then you can wear whatever kind of hairstyle, but your head would be cut. So it become a matter of life and death. And we can see a lot of Han people was forced to have their hair cut. And this caused a lot of hatred among the Han people, the majority people in China. So the conflict exists, but at the same time, cultural integration also happened in the Qing Dynasty. So that is almost the last part of the Chinese history. We say that from 1681 to 1796, the Qing Dynasty is a very, very rich country. Its GDP is a third of the world. Total industrial output is 32% of the world, but its economic, political, and scientific and cultural development were all in the bottleneck because it became even more conservative, even more close than the Ming Dynasty. The international trade and the international communication is almost one-sided. But we know that at the same time, the European countries were different. There's a first industrial revolution, and the spinning jenny has been invented. So the labor power has been replaced by machine power, and the capitalist started. And the Great Britain, with the trade abroad and industrialization, they accumulate huge amount of money and becoming the first capitalist country. The political system changed, and the parliament and government change, and the American institutions has been signed, and ideologically, the Renaissance in Italy and Enlightenment movement in France has advocated science and democracy. And all these changes in the world does not affect China. And China at the time is a very closed nation. So now we come to the last part, the modern age, the mid-19th century to the mid-20th century. Now, the first thing is the Opium War. The Opium War started in 1840, and because at the time, because the trade surplus of China has everything exported, but they don't import anything. So there's a huge trade surplus, and so against the deficits of its trading partner. And then also there's a shortage of silver in the world. Then the Eastern Indian Company, which is a British company, when they want to do trade with China, they found they don't have enough silver to pay for the commodities. So they talked to the Chinese government by saying, we'll give you opium as the media for trade. Even though the government do not agree, however, opium become the media for paying commodities that they buy from China. And gradually, the government officials, the intellectuals realized the problems this opium gave to the Chinese people and to Chinese, particularly the young people. It is said that 30% or 50% of the Chinese young people have the experience of taking opium, and some get addicted to it. So they started to destroy opium publicly. But this led to the Opium War against British government. It's a Chinese government against British government. And this lead to the national strength of China and the economy of China in a gradually declining trend. And China began its long-term trade deficits. And after 1940, the Opium War to 1900, in a short period of 60 years, China has 5 wars against the major powers in the world. The first Opium War, the second Opium War, the Sino-French War, the Sino-Japanese War, and the war of aggression by the 8-power aligned forces. So China has become a semi-colonized country at the time. And then we come to the 1911 revolution. This is the rise of the modern China, and the revolution overthrown of the Qing Dynasty and introduced science and democracy towards China. And they started the anti-colonialism movement and promote modern industries and private factories in China. All right, I think this is so much for my presentation on the Chinese history and the formation of Chinese philosophical ideas.